We have made it to the number 4 female serial killer on my list of female serial killers. If you haven't already done so, be sure to follow this page and like and share this video and all the other videos on this page. I have done 21 female serial killers this far. Be sure to watch them. There are some crazy ones on this list to say the least. So let's get into my number 4 spot. Let me introduce you all to Karla Homolka, one half of the Ken and Barbie killers. Karla Homolka is a Canadian convicted killer who, along with her husband Paul Bernardo, committed a series of horrific crimes in the late 1980s and early 1990s. They were involved in the rape and murder of several young women, including Karla's sister Tammy Homolka. Karla Homolka's childhood seemed relatively normal on the surface. She was born on May 4, 1970, in Ontario, Canada. However, reports later revealed instances of family dysfunction and abuse. Her later involvement in heinous crimes with her husband Paul Bernardo brought attention to her troubled past, but specific details about her childhood are not extensively documented. Karla Homolka was implicated and ultimately caught when her husband Paul Bernardo became a suspect in a series of brutal crimes, including the rape and murder of several young women. During the investigation, Homolka struck a deal with prosecutors to testify against Bernardo in exchange for a reduced sentence. The deal led to her arrest and conviction in 1993. She served 12 years in prison for her role in the crimes before being released in 2005. As of January 2020, she lives in Salaberry de Valleyfield without her husband or children. How scary is it to think that Karla is out here somewhere in the world right now? It's a little airy, right? Please be sure to like this video and follow this page for more content like this. Also, we are moving into my number 3 spot on my countdown of female serial killers. Stay tuned! Number 3 is up next, and you won't want to miss it.
Canada's notorious schoolgirl killer is an occasional volunteer at a Montreal school. City News has learned Karla Homolka has been in the classroom and on a field trip. Dominic Fazioli tells us why the school didn't do a background check.
Karla Homolka is one of Canada's most notorious criminals, along with her then-husband Paul Bernardo, killings of 2 schoolgirls and her 15-year-old sister. Since her release from prison, parents have opposed her presence outside schools, including her children's schools. Last year, there was a backlash in Chateauguay, and now she's facing resistance in Montreal's NDG district. Can I talk to you for a second?
No, you can't.
Since September, Homolka has been a regular fixture at Greaves Adventist Academy, a private Christian school.
We don't want her there. We don't want her in the school.
Lily is a concerned parent at the NDG school. She doesn't want her face shown. She says Homolka does more than just drop off and pick up her kids. She claims Homolka occasionally volunteers at the school. Several sources connected with the school say that on March 22nd, Homolka helped supervise a group of kindergarten students during a field trip to the Montreal Science Centre.
How would you feel knowing that your child is interacting with a person who's a serial killer? It's not right.
Those same sources say Homolka has even been inside the school from time to time. She's even brought her dog into the classroom for children to pet.
She's not supposed to be there. Why is she allowed to be in the school?
Lily says many parents have spoken to the school principal, but nothing has changed. We spoke with Homolka last week. Karla, can I ask you a question? Do you volunteer or work at the school?
Who are you?
You know who I am.
No, I don't know who we are. Who are you?
I'm a news reporter.
So now let's look at the psychology of someone like Karla Homolka. Currently, there are 2 main theories. 1. She tricked and beat the system. She was an active participant who genuinely enjoyed torture and murder just as much as Paul did. She acted scared that she was going to be harmed and controlled by Paul, but really she was just as sadistic and twisted as he was, and she fooled the police and the prosecutors. 2. Her criminal actions ultimately resulted due to her coupling up with Paul Bernardo. Had she not met Paul, Karla may have wound up being a textbook case of a woman with narcissistic personality disorder. You know the types. You may have a neighbor who you can't stand being around who has this diagnosis, but she isn't a killer. So here's what we know about Karla. She was the oldest of 3 sisters. Her father was allegedly a big drinker who fought with her mother regularly and was emotionally abusive. Karla was considered a daddy's girl, though he would oscillate between strong affections towards Karla and calling her a slut and a whore when he drank. As a child, Karla scored abnormally high on standardized tests. She was known amongst her peers to be a bully, making fun of people she thought looked weird. She craved excitement, she broke rules, and she showed little compassion for others. While I can't diagnose Karla as I haven't met her nor treated her, she definitely seems to present as someone who fits the criteria of narcissistic personality disorder with the sprinkles of antisocial personality disorder. Like many narcissists, she lacks empathy and is self-centered, and there is no excuse for her behavior. She should be behind bars, like Paul, for the rest of her life for what she did. What's fascinating to me about this case is that I don't think that Karla would have committed any of these deviant sex crimes or murders had she not met Paul Bernardo. Before meeting Karla, Paul had already been stalking and brutally raping and beating women, and according to experts, there was only a matter of time before he actually killed one of them. We know he regularly beat and degraded Karla on a regular basis. He once cut off the head of her pet iguana and barbecued it and ate it like a hamburger, and another time he spread his own feces on a piece of bread and made her eat it. Karla, like many narcissists, viewed her relationship as merely an extension of herself. She wanted to keep the delusion of the perfect marriage alive, and her relationship to Paul, as well as her own wedding day, was far more important than the death of her own sister. She was selfish and callous and would do anything to please Paul. After her conviction, Karla was given a series of psychological tests, and she scored low on the psychopathy scale as well as the masochism scale. This strengthens the idea that her relationship with Paul was a key factor in her behaviors. She took the abuse and divvied out the abuse, not because of her own personality, but because of the relationship with Paul. People often assume that narcissists can't be codependent and that they're the dominant person in the relationship. The narcissistic martyr is very much a real thing, and it's incredible what a horrible match can bring out in a narcissist of any kind. Karla may have fooled authorities, but she wouldn't have had to had there not been a Paul.
This woman spiked her 15-year-old sister's drink with a sedative and then offered her up as a virgin sacrifice to her boyfriend on Christmas Eve of 1990. And yes, her sister Tammy did end up passing away that night. This was due to vomiting while unconscious. The woman I'm talking about is named Karla Homolka, and she was half of the duo that became known as the Ken and Barbie killers. The sedatives she had put in her sister's drink were from the vet clinic where Karla worked. All that so Karla's boyfriend could have his way with her younger sister. Basically so he could R-word her while she was unconscious. This led to her sister's death, which was ruled an accident at the time. But this wasn't the only crime the couple committed. They would go on to kill and R-word several other women. And you might be surprised to hear that Karla is currently a free woman, and this is after serving only a 12-year sentence for her crimes. She was released in 2005 and now lives a quiet life in Quebec, Canada. There she volunteers at a local elementary school. A big change from what she was up to 30 years ago. But Karla had a pretty normal upbringing. She was born on May 4th of 1970 and was raised in Ontario, Canada. She was part of a well-adjusted family. Both her mom and dad were present in her life. And she had two younger sisters. Her friends from high school remember her being smart and attractive. Many people would say that she was the total package of brains and beauty. And to top it all off, she was an animal lover as well. It was really no surprise that she began working at a veterinary clinic at the age of 17. This was right after she graduated from high school. So where did it all go wrong? Many people believe it is when she met a man named Paul Bernardo in 1987. The two met while she was at a vet convention in Toronto. She was 17 at the time and he was 23. Either way, since the day they met, they became absolutely inseparable. And the crimes they would end up committing together were absolutely disgusting. Go to part 2 right now for more. This is part 2 on the woman who spiked her 15-year-old sister's drink with a sedative and then offered her up as a virgin sacrifice to her boyfriend on Christmas Eve. Now, some people believe that Karla was coerced by Paul to commit these crimes, or that she was even a victim herself. However, others believe that she was a sadistic criminal mastermind. In fact, many experts believe that she has to have sociopathic tendencies, and that those tendencies probably started to present themselves more and more as she got older. And then she met someone who she felt was her perfect match, and the two would go on to get married on June 29th of 1991. And this was just 6 months after her sister passing away. Her sister Tammy, whose drink she spiked. It was a very lavish ceremony. No expenses were spared, but it was around 3 weeks prior to the wedding when Karla had given Paul his wedding gift. A 15-year-old virgin girl, a girl that she had tranquilized and brought home. As you can imagine, Paul was very happy about this. After both Paul and Karla R-worded the girl, they left her in their house to sleep it off. The girl woke up sore the next day but didn't know what had actually happened to her. This was a girl that Karla knew, by the way. But this was not the only time that Karla had taken part in this sort of crime with Paul. And 3 times it ended in murder. This was in the cases of Leslie Mahaffey in 1991 and Kristen French in 1992. The first time was with her own sister Tammy, which we have already talked about. Leslie Mahaffey's body was found in Lake Gibson. Her body had been dismembered and placed in several concrete blocks. Those blocks had later been tossed into a lake. And it is believed that Paul Bernardo decided to end her life because during the attack on her, she had mentioned that her blindfold was slipping and that she would be able to identify them. Then there was Kristen French. Go to part 3 right now if you want to know more. This is part 3 on the woman who spiked her own sister's drink and then offered her up as a virgin sacrifice to her boyfriend on Christmas Eve. Kristen French's body was found in a ditch on the side of the road, and her hair had been cut off. And investigators believe that it might have always been the plan for them to murder Kristen. They think this because she was never blindfolded. And just so you realize how sick Karla and Paul were, the couple taped all their attacks on their victims. And they had a lot of tapes. So how did they get caught? Eventually, it was Karla Homolka who turned Paul Bernardo and herself in. This was in 1993 after the two had had an altercation. At the same time, Canadian authorities were searching for a person responsible for R-wording many people in the Scarborough area in Canada. This also turned out to be Paul Bernardo. In 1993, Karla Homolka reached a plea bargain. She was sentenced to only 12 years behind bars. She was released in 2005, and now she's a free woman living in Quebec, Canada. She has a husband and 3 children. Paul got a very different sentence. In 1995, Paul Bernardo was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. And he has applied for parole in 2018 and in 2021, but he was denied both times. But in 2023, he was transferred from a maximum security prison to a medium security prison. And he remains there till this day at the La Macaza Institution. This was the most recent pictures that I could find of the two of them. And Paul's is actually a court sketch because I couldn't really find a recent photo of him. Karla is 53 years old at this time, and Paul is 59. I've said enough about these two. Okay, bye.
Most evil women in history. Karla Homolka. Karla Homolka is Canada's most notorious female serial killer. She helped her husband, Paul Bernardo, essay and murder at least 3 women, one of them being her younger sister. She received a fairly light sentence for her crimes, thanks to the plea deal that she struck with the prosecution. This was in exchange for her testimony against Bernardo. She received a reduced prison sentence of just 12 years. The prosecution didn't feel badly about this deal at first. Homolka claimed that Bernardo had been abusing her and that she had been forced to participate in the murders. However, video evidence later surfaced, proving that she wasn't a victim but an active participant in all of the murders. Nothing could be done though. That's why it was known as the deal with the devil.
5 facts about the Barbie and King killers Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka. Paul's DNA was taken as evidence for the case of the Scarborough, but it sat on a shelf for 2 years before it was tested, meaning that lives could have been saved if it had been tested sooner. The day Leslie Mahaffey's body parts were found encased in cement was their wedding day. Karla was not a virgin when she met Paul, which he resented, so as a gift she got him her own 15-year-old sister. The two gave the teenager a substance to make her go unconscious, and together they essayed her. They used an animal tranquilizer stolen from Karla's job, but she choked on her own vomit and passed away. Before calling 911, Karla and Paul covered up the evidence. Their crimes were exposed after Karla walked into the police station and ratted Paul out. She was originally seen as another victim until the videotapes of their crimes surfaced, and they showed her as a willing and enthusiastic participation in the essay of young girls. One of these videotapes was of a girl that Karla had met through the vet clinic. She brought this girl to their house, spiked her drink, and then presented her unconscious body as a gift for Paul. And this was something that she did unprompted, showing that she did have free will in these disgusting acts. Infuriatingly, by the time these videotapes were found, Karla had already cut a deal with the police. Like I said, they made home videos hurting these girls for their own pleasure. And the Toronto media wanted these videos to be published, but the court refused. Thankfully, because nobody's mental health needs to see that. Paul is serving a life sentence, but Karla is out free after serving just 12 years. She now lives in Quebec and volunteers at a daycare. She now goes by the names Karla Leanne Teal, and Leanne Bordalai since she remarried a man with that last name.
Karla Homolka was released from prison in July of 2005, which sparked widespread outrage and controversy in Canada. No shit. Let's go through some of those key details of her release. Karla Homolka served a full 12-year sentence for manslaughter as part of the plea deal that she made with prosecutors in exchange for her testimony against then-husband Paul Bernardo. While in prison, Karla received psychological treatment, and reports indicated that she maintained good behavior throughout her incarceration. Upon her release, Karla was granted freedom, but was placed under several restrictive conditions. The first condition being mandatory reporting. Karla had to regularly report her whereabouts to police at all times. The next being supervised meetings. Karla was required to notify authorities if she intended to meet anybody under the age of 16, particularly to prevent her from having unsupervised access to minors. First of all, that shouldn't even have been a condition. That should have been a non-negotiable. You are not allowed to have any contact with anybody under the age of 18. How about that? But no, we'll do 16, you just gotta tell us about it. Again, makes no sense. Restricted travel.
I'm known as Karla Homolka, and my life is a story of manipulation and complicity. Born in Port Credit, Ontario, I grew up in a seemingly normal family. However, beneath the surface, there were dark currents. I met Paul Bernardo when I was 17, and he quickly became the center of my world. Our relationship was intense and all-consuming, leading me down a path I never imagined. Paul had dark desires, and I found myself drawn into his twisted fantasies. Together, we committed unspeakable acts. I helped him lure young women, including my own sister, Tammy, into our home. We drugged and assaulted them, recording our heinous acts on video. Tammy's death was a turning point, but instead of stopping, we continued our spree. In 1993, our crimes caught up with us. The evidence was overwhelming, and I struck a deal with the prosecution, testifying against Paul in exchange for a lighter sentence. My plea bargain was controversial, dubbed the deal with the devil by the media. After my release in 2005, I tried to rebuild my life, moving to Quebec and starting a family. But the shadows of my past continue to haunt me, a constant reminder of the horrors I was part of. Have you ever wondered what drives someone to become an accomplice to such evil? What could have been done to prevent such a descent into darkness?
I am Karla Homolka.
And I am Paul Bernardo.
Together we became notorious for the Ken and Barbie killings that took place in Canada during the early 1990s.
As a then husband and wife duo, we unleashed a wave of terror through a series of heinous crimes.
We abducted, sexually assaulted, and brutally murdered 3 innocent teenage girls, including my own sister, Tammy. These acts of unspeakable cruelty were meticulously planned and executed, with some of the horrifying assaults captured on chilling videotapes.
However, our dark secrets could only remain hidden for so long. A relentless police investigation exposed the extent of our depravity, and the truth behind our twisted actions emerged into the public eye.
Controversially, I struck a plea deal that portrayed me as a cooperative witness, leading to a reduced sentence. This decision sparked immense outrage and raised questions about justice and the severity of punishment.
I was ultimately convicted for my role in the crimes. I was found guilty of numerous charges, including murder and sexual assault, and was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole.
The Ken and Barbie killings stand as a chilling reminder of the depths to which human evil can sink.
I am the Barbie killer. My name is Karla Homolka, and I helped end the lives of 3 minors with my husband. I grew up in a mostly normal family until I met Paul Bernardo, who took me to places I couldn't imagine. It started with my sister after Paul expressed his attraction. I helped him drug and violate my sister when she came to my house. We tried this act again with a horse tranquilizer, and my sister unfortunately passed away. Her death was ruled an accident. Over the next year, we invited 3 other girls over to drug and violate them. This led to 2 more deaths. After the last death, we were caught. I controversially pled guilty to only 12 years in prison to testify against my husband. The evidence against us was overwhelming, as filmed all of our crimes. My release and life have caused multiple media storms in Canada. I tried to settle in Alberta, but the media pushed me out. I eventually remarried and now live in Quebec. Now looking back, I regret what I did. I can't believe I let someone like Paul lead me astray.